Okay, we will get started. We have a lot of participants. Thank you all for joining. Today's session is called The Art and Science of Why People Care. I'm Greg Clayton, President at Education Dynamics. I'm going to be your host for today's session, and our speakers will introduce themselves in just a moment. But first, we've got a couple of housekeeping items for you, for your information. This presentation will be recorded. We will be emailing you a link after the webinar concludes today, and the recording will be sent out sometime same day, which would mean today or the next morning, so you'll have access to the recording of this webinar. And first, we got a couple of slides just to give you a little bit of information on Education Dynamics. At Education Dynamics, we believe that the status quo is no longer sustainable for higher ed institutions. This moment that we are in right now in higher education requires thinking different and challenging the status quo. We believe that driving revenue growth and building and elevating brand reputation are core components in balance that ensures financial sustainability in this moment that we are currently all in. Our solutions do challenge the status quo and drive execution on those two fronts, which equal results that exceeds industry averages. Next slide. At Education Dynamics, we are here to help take our partners further faster with results that outperform the market, creating and capturing demand for partners, driving a 47% average enrollment growth over 5 years while managing to a cost of acquisition reduction. Please reach out to schedule a consultation with us and learn more about how we can help drive revenue and reputation for your institution. Today's presentation will focus on brand and reputation side of the scale that you saw just a minute ago. And this was one of the most popular sessions that we had at InsightsEDU. You can go to the next slide. So this is part of a series of webinars that we call the InsightsEDU Echo Webinar Series. We've been doing these since March 13th. This is the last of that series. If you missed some of the other ones, you can visit our webpage and get the recordings of all of those and listen in on those. But again, I had the pleasure of attending this session, Art and Science of Why People Care, in person. It was standing room only in the audience there, and it was the most interactive and fun. So you're in for a treat today. So from here, I am going to turn it over to Kelly and Renee to introduce themselves and begin.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Greg. And thank you everyone for joining. Please feel free to let us know who you are and where you're tuning in from in the chat. As Greg mentioned, this was an interactive in-person presentation. So I have to warn all of you, we will ask you throughout to chime in the chat, share your thoughts and ideas as well. We really do want this to be a conversation as well. So I'm Kelly Ratliff. I'm part of the team here at R.W. Jones and Education Dynamics. Prior to joining the agency, I spent nearly 20 years working on campus in a variety of areas, including enrollment, marketing, academic and student affairs. And I'm so pleased to be joined by my colleague, Renee, and I'll let her introduce herself as well before we kick things off.
Great. Thank you, Kelly, and hello to everyone. We're so happy to have you join us. My name is Renee Daly, and I am the Vice President of Brand Strategy. Prior to joining R.W. Jones and the EDI team, I've spent the majority of my career on the agency side, always for the branding and marketing of higher education. So thrilled to be here with you all.
Wonderful. So here's what you can expect during our time together today. So The art and science of why people care. What does that mean? So the first part of our time together, we'll talk a little bit about the art, the emotional connection between people and brands, and why does this matter to us, as folks who work in higher education and serve students. And then I will pass it over to Renee and we'll talk about the science. So uncovering the ways that we can use research and data and really just learning more about our people, and how we can use that to really add facts to those feelings, and create the Venn diagram of how those two things go together. So we will kick things off with the art and really set the stage with a couple of quotes here. So I think it's always nice to kind of start with the why, right? So a brand that captures your mind gains behavior. A brand that captures your heart gains commitment, and that's from Scott Talgo. And then I love this one too, that a brand is the set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that taken together account for a consumer's decision to choose one product or service over another. So that's a little more of a business-minded quote, but really important, again, to the work that we're all doing for our institutions as well. So that's just a little bit to start the stage. And to get you thinking about this as well, we'd love for you to take a moment and think about a brand that you love. It can be from any category. It doesn't have to be related to higher education. Maybe it is your institution or your alma mater, and that's great too. But feel free to chime in the chat and let us know a brand that you love and why. Does it give you a particular feeling? Do you have memories attached to it? Would you recommend it to a friend or family member? So I'm going to pause for a second here and again, encourage you to share in the chat something that's top of mind for you. I know when Renee and I did this in person, we found that we were both carrying a product from the same fashion brand, for example. So we just thought that was so fun, and we were able to share that with the group. Right now we've got Disney, we've got Costco. Those definitely came up when we were in person together too. Oh, chocolate, Hershey's chocolate, yes. Love chocolate, lots of great memories, whether it's, Halloween as a kid or time with friends around a campfire eating s'mores. I'm making myself hungry here, but National Park Service, yes, I also love their social media. So those are great examples. I think we all have something that we could think of that we're attached to. Subaru, yes, car brands. I love my Kia Soul. I drive a hamster car, and I'm proud of that. So it's really fun to, I think about, all of the connections that we have on our own to brands. And so to kind of take this a step further, I'm going to move us to the next slide here, and we're going to practice. So even if you couldn't think of a brand off the top of your head right now, here's one. This is a brand that I love, and I'd love to hear from you. How does this brand make you feel? So we had a lot of different reactions when we shared this one with the group in person. Hungry, yes, I'm also hungry. Depending on which time zone you're in, it's almost lunchtime for me here in Arizona. Yes, childhood, cozy. There's all sorts of different memories that you might have with macaroni and cheese, or maybe you're a person that, you can't have dairy products, or you just really don't enjoy, this kind of food in your diet for whatever reason. And that's okay. So maybe this brand doesn't make you feel good. I know when we did this activity with our Eddie colleagues, a couple people said, oh, that's processed food. Like, I don't enjoy that. That doesn't make me feel good, right? So there's all sorts of ways that this brand might make you feel, but it makes you feel something or evokes a memory, perhaps, or again, you have some sort of connection that your brain can make with this image when you see it, right? And that's the important piece. So we'll go to the next one here. Another recognizable brand from a different category. How does this image make you feel? I live in the mountains, as I mentioned, here in Arizona. When I look out my window, I'm actually looking at a giant peak right outside my front door. So this makes me feel like adventure, outside, good memories with friends here, even just where I live, warm, outdoorsy, or some of the things that people are sharing in the chat. Or perhaps you're a person that doesn't really enjoy outdoor activities, so maybe this doesn't have a great, connotation for you, or you can kind of, take it or leave it. Courageous. Yeah. Theo mentioned that, this is an image that has been appropriated in different ways or used in different ways. So maybe you've got some brand confusion, right? When you're looking at an image like this that shows the mountains. But these are things, again, that just to kind of set the stage here and get us thinking about the emotional connection. So we're going to pivot here a little bit and think about, what does the research tell us about this? Why do we have feelings when we look at brands? And why does this matter to us as folks who work in higher education, whether you're in enrollment or marketing or wherever you sit on campus, or maybe you're a campus partner too? So we do know that emotional attachment is the biggest driver of value for purchases, consumers say. We also know that customers with a strong emotional connection to a brand have a 306% higher lifetime value compared to those who don't have that connection to a brand. And we also know, and we again can probably all feel this ourselves, consumers are more likely to make a purchase or engage when something feels personalized to them. And again, you can probably, not just think about this from a research perspective, but think about your own experience as someone who consumes brands and consumes marketing as well. So higher ed is not so different. When we think about higher ed brands, for example, one of the things that we found in our Modern Learner report this year, which again, if you missed some of those former webinars, I highly encourage you to go back and check those out too. But we know that students now more than ever, for example, are searching for institutions just based on the brand, more than anything else. So if you think about the activity we did with mac and cheese in Patagonia, what kind of factors did you weigh in your college decision-making process? And why did you choose your undergraduate institution? And I know this is a little bit more of a bigger question, but if you're comfortable sharing what some of those reasons are or factors are, would highly welcome you to mention those in the chat. So I know for me, for example, I chose my alma mater a lot based on an experience I had as a youth visiting for a summer program. And so when I went to my campus in 7th or 8th grade and I had that experience, I had this really emotional tie to that institution. And so when it came time for me to think about where I was going to go to college, it was hard for me to think of any other place because I had already developed that bond with the place and had all of these memories attached to it. So yes, we've got cost and value, absolutely. Again, going back to that Modern Learner report, we know that that is a huge piece for students and why they make their decisions, or maybe wanting to be in the city, liking the campus environment, and you can picture yourself there. Absolutely. I used to work in admissions, and that was always a big thing I would hear from students and parents is just that, oh, wow, I can really see myself here, right? And again, that is not a scientific piece of data. That is an emotional piece of data, an emotional decision factor. Scholarships, of course, huge decision-making factor. So yes, I mean, again, we're kind of tying and weaving the story here that again, we're not so different. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide as well. So whether or not you shared in the chat or not, I'm guessing that some sort of feeling bubbled up for you. So whether that was, again, in your initial visit, like for me in my story, or whether, you attended an online program or work with online students, maybe that was a first interaction you had with someone who worked on the outreach team or, someone you connected with in a virtual visit event or something along those lines. So whether it's those initial touch points or alumni reunions and everything in between. So much of the college experience is personal. Of course, it's business too. We all know that, but it's personal. That's why we're making these decisions. So this means that our job as college marketers and enrollment leaders, and again, no matter where you sit on campus, is not just to talk about the features and the programs and the outcomes, although of course we know those things are highly important too, but it's to build that authentic bond, emotional bond between the student and our institution. But how do we do that? And there is some science to that. So I love to kind of transition with this quote from Stephen Covey, who many of you are likely familiar with, that, if we could summarize in one sentence, the single most important principle I have learned when I'm thinking about interpersonal relations, it would be this: seek first to understand and then to be understood, right? So how do we understand our audiences without learning about them first? And Renee is going to tell us more about that as we move into the science section. And I'm going to hop into the chat and look forward to engaging with all of you during the rest of our presentation.
Terrific. So jumping right into the science, you know that we want to build those emotional bonds, but how do we do that in a way that can really help support and clarify and move our brand and marketing communications efforts forwards? We know that the corporate sector has long taken advantage of science to market products from, orange juice to dish detergent. But for the most part, higher ed really has not made that same shift. And market research can really help us to understand attention, motivation, and emotion, and is really one of the most powerful tools that we have in order to better understand all of our various stakeholder audiences, internally and externally, so that we can then move our brand and marketing efforts forward. If we go to the next slide, we can take a look at why marketing research is important. There's a varied number of reasons here. It allows our insights to move beyond anecdotes and gut feelings, right? Get us all on that kind of proverbial same page. It helps us to uncover a better understanding of our target audiences, and it helps to really find consensus objectively and build buy-in. We really use market research here to help us know what compels our stakeholders to invest their attention, their emotion, and their action. And it really allows us to establish what is true and authentic among our internal audiences, uncover what is desired and compelling among our external audiences, and then assess how that is distinctive within the competitive set. If we go to the next slide, we can also use our market research to gather those crucial key performance indicators so that we can really evaluate the efficacy of our marketing and communications investment. It helps us to ensure confidence and mitigate risk. Our research is kind of like an insurance policy, right? That we can use to really cover and support our brand and marketing strategy. And it helps us to clarify our goals and our objectives. We really can now use this kind of outside in assessment that could help us to identify any types of issues like misperceptions that may exist, inconsistent voice, or poor targeting before they become critical. So moving forward, we'll take a look at some of the various forms of market research. So starting with qualitative, our goal here with qualitative research is really exploratory, right? This is when we start to first kind of peel back the layers of the onion. And there's a number of different methodologies that we can use, from focus groups to in-depth individual interviews, as well as collaborative activities. The analysis is subjective and the findings are directional when we're looking at qualitative research. Some of the key benefits that we get from our qual is that we get detailed, direct quotes. So now we can really hear how our audiences feel and see and read how they feel right from their mouths and from their minds. We can also use qualitative to probe for deeper inquiry, right? The most powerful qualitative question is why? right? Tell me more about that. Why do you feel that way? We can also gather information that's really difficult to quantify, really tapping into a lot more of those emotional benefits. And then we can use all of that information to then help inform the creation of very tailored quantitative surveys. Some example findings from Qual, you'll see there's really no numbers, right? Or percentages or statistics attached here. It's broader. We're talking about, the vast majority of participants agree, or most respondents feel, some think, or only a few mentioned. So then looking at some, kind of more specific examples, we have a very kind of tried and true focus group moderator guide here that really provides a detailed roadmap or a script that outlines the topics and questions and activities that can be covered during that discussion session. One of the beauties of qualitative research is that you can really use an iterative design so that what you're learning from your previous conversations can then affect the types of questions that you're asking or probing on in latter conversations. So we can really use that type of iterative approach to make the questions that we're asking even smarter, right? And even more targeted to our audiences. Another example, if we move forward, something a little bit more maybe fun and creative, but we can use it qualitative as an opportunity to really kind of dig in deeper to who we are as an institution, right? This is just an example that I used recently at Whittier College, asking our focus group participants to really think about their students and what makes them so distinctive and highly valued, and provided some prompts along the way to help guide that conversation and really get beyond some of those maybe initial or surface level responses to really dig in deeper into who we are. So now then shifting gears over to quantitative, the goal of our quantitative research is really to provide conclusive data and conclusive information. The methodology here is surveys. But way back in the day when I first started doing this work, it was primarily through phone surveys. That really is very, very few and far between. Written surveys, of course, kind of predated that, but now primarily the methodology is really online surveys. And we're able to target a number of different audiences through our own internal lists or through panel providers that can really help us specifically target an audience or group. The analysis from our quant is objective, and then the findings are projectable. We're able to take our data and then apply that to the broader population. Some of the key benefits of our quant research is that we're now able to really identify relationships between variables as well as between our key stakeholder audiences. We're enabled to really dig deeper into the data and look for statistical differences within those audiences. So now we can start to better understand differences by geography or by gender or by level of education, right? Any type of demographic variable that we really want to dig into. So again, we can have an even more targeted understanding of our audiences and how they may differ. And we can use that data to help guide our strategic marketing decisions. Some example findings here. Right now, we start to see those numbers and percentages, right? We may see things along the lines of 92% of our undergraduate prospective students report, or younger alums are more likely than our older alums to feel this way or want to do that. 48% are familiar or very familiar with our institution. So now jumping into just some examples of what that quantitative data can look like. A great starting point for our quant is to get some baseline measures of perception, things that we as an institution can start to track over time to really be able to tie back and see the extent to which our marketing and communications efforts are resonating. So our year zero data, we can start looking at awareness, right? We can ask about aided awareness, unaided awareness, or even more specifically, familiarity with ourselves and a small set of competitors. And we can use this starting at, our kind of point in time where we are now, and then be able to see over time how that shifts and be able to use that to really support our Marcom efforts, right? Really support the budget that we are most likely asking for, more of coming in our next fiscal year, and really, again, making sure that our efforts are targeted. Some other baseline measures of perception that we can use quantitative to get at is academic quality, right? Perceived academic quality for ourselves and the other institutions within our competitive set. We can also, if we move forward, start looking at interest, right? Level of interest in attending our institution as well as some of the other schools within our competitive set. We can also start looking at opinion, right? What is the current opinion of our institution? And use this data to start, again, tracking over time, or start digging deeper to see, hey, is there a particular generation of alums or grad year where we're starting to see maybe some distinctiveness here, and we need to really start paying attention to understanding maybe what were some things that could have happened, and now more importantly, what can we do to address some of those challenges. Now, once we have some of those baseline measures, here's where we can really use the quant to start better understanding those motivators and drivers. So if we do our qual and we understand what are our strengths, where are some areas that we really want to lean into, we can then back that up with our quant to see, okay, not only do we consider this a strength internally, but how does that line up with what our audiences are interested in, right? What is it that they want and that they're looking for? Because if we know that our audiences don't care, right, then we need to ask ourselves, how much weight are we putting into, or how much prioritization are we giving that specific messaging within our broader communications? So this is just an example here. This was a question that we asked for an academic health system, really trying to better understand what specific attributes are most important when our audiences were thinking about their or their family's healthcare needs, right? Really starting to unpack and discover, what is it that's most important. The data here was so great, right? It was really directional in letting us know that for this audience, bringing experts together as a team to achieve the best possible outcomes for patients is what was really driving interest for this audience group. We can also look at perception, right? Again, staying with this academic health system. Now we're starting to look beneath some of those top level associations into really specific attributes and features and motivators that can drive our audiences to engage with us. And this really, what this does for us is really help to prioritize, right? It doesn't mean that we're taking something off the table, but it helps us to prioritize our messaging so that we know we're going out with the strongest, most broadest appeal. And now, once we start digging into the data, we know, hey, if we're talking to audiences, that live on the West Coast, here are some things that even further stick out to them versus audiences on the East Coast, and get really sophisticated and smart with our marketing and communications. Then lastly, we always have to remember how important it is to report our success, right? We know that we are in an ever standing environment of really needing to prove the ROI, prove the efficacy of our marketing and communications investment. And so really being able to first go in and detail our goals ahead of time, build consensus around those key performance indicators, and then after we have all of our data and our findings, prepare a report or a dashboard that really can be shared broadly. In our Marcom organization and function. We're typically really sitting shoulder to shoulder, right, with admissions and enrollment and alumni relations and advancement, and really building on the success of our broader teams to really help support that Marcom effort and investment. And then most importantly, not just giving the data, right, but using our data to help weave together a story and a narrative that, again, really supports the very important work that we're all doing. Okay, I think we're now going to head into an activity. Kelly, did you want to take us away here?
Absolutely. So this is a fun Mad Libs activity. Many of you are likely familiar with Mad Libs. I know we used to do these on our family vacations over the years, with my brother and I. But this is an activity that can be utilized with maybe your team, or I used to work with student ambassadors, and this would be the perfect type of activity that I would use with a group like that to, again, start thinking about how to connect some of these feelings in a more data informed and factual way to help inform your strategies, right? So we're aware that you can't fill out this Mad Lib on the screen, but at the end of the presentation, Renee and I are going to be sharing our contact information. And so if this is an activity that you would, again, like to use with your colleagues or with students that you work with or in your team or department, we are happy to share a copy with you so that you can really, enjoy this as a way to kind of keep this train of thought going and thinking about how you could, move something like this forward on your campus if you're really looking to build some more understanding and some more art and science-based practices around your brand and marketing strategies. All right, so that is the end of our formal time together. But Renee and I are here and happy to address any questions that you have. So we will give you a moment in the chat and feel free to let us know any questions. And Greg, of course, if you have any housekeeping items, go ahead and chime in.
Yeah, well, we're waiting hopefully for some questions in the chat. We have a few questions that I'll pose to you guys that were pre-submitted from the audience. And here's the first one. I think this was answered in the presentation, but maybe there's more. How to build a brand image from the ground up with a small team. What should be prioritized?
Greg, I'm so sorry. Could you repeat that question? It was cutting in and out a bit on my end.
Sure. How to build a brand image from the ground up with a small team. What should we prioritize?
Got it. Yeah, I would answer that question by one, starting to really take that team, whether how big or small it is, and start going around your campus and engaging with other faculty, staff, senior leadership, current students, and alums, if you can get your hands on them too, to really better understand their experience and their perception of the institution, right? What are the things that really stand out as being the strengths, as potential weaknesses, and start to look for some of that connective tissue, right? Start to look at what are we hearing consistently across those various audiences. Once you also, have prospective students coming onto campus or engaging with them online, we can now start to feed some of that information in and gather more data and more input around how important that is to them. And that's how we can really kind of start to slowly build into really carving out a space for your institution, looking at, where is it that we have strengths? Where is it that intersects with what our audiences are looking for, and then run a competitor audit, right? Pick out, those kind of 6 to 8 institutions that you overlap with most, and start going onto their websites and seeing how they're really presenting their best self, so we can start to look for and identify, some of those kind of quote unquote white space opportunities for your institution.
Got it. Thank you. There is a live question that we have Here it is. Our college is stuck on informative. What are some concrete ways to move toward persuasive programming?
Yes, I would say here too, there's a lot that we know or that we can at least expect to see when we start talking about what are those factors of most importance, right? I think we can expect to see cost, location, availability of academic program, quality of academic program, safety, right? Some of those really top line factors. But now, if we start to do those exercises where we start to think more about who we are as an institution and why that matters, right? Why what it is that we offer really matters. We can start to then move from being, more informative and transactional to really developing and starting to build those emotional relationships.
And I'll even share an example of, something I did in a previous position. And, it can be hard sometimes to know where to start. But, in one of my former roles working in our admissions and marketing team for an engineering college, I think we had very much led with, program features, program data, all of that kind of in our email communications to students. And one of the ways we started at least adding some of that art, that the emotional pieces was I worked with my engineering ambassador group, and we just did some initial kind of interviews with them, helping to understand some of the reasons they chose the program, not just the program they chose, but why, who were they? And then we started weaving in some of their quotes, their personal stories to our email communications with prospective students to give it some more of that emotional flair, right? In addition to knowing that they also care about the program itself and the features, right? So there are, certainly big ways, big efforts you can undertake to peel back some of these things, but you could start this type of initiative tomorrow, or next week with students that or maybe it's student employees in your department, whatever it may be, to pull in some of that personalization in a really authentic way, in addition to doing that big research too.
Thank you, Kelly. There's a question in the chat. There's two. We'll take them from the bottom up. From Amanda Wilkins. My community college is about to engage in brand awareness research with a firm. Do you have some recommendations about essential considerations we should be thinking of as we start this process?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. First, I would say, write your research instruments and then rewrite and rewrite, right? Age really improves a research tool. So kind of think wine and cheese when you're developing, those research instruments. You'll definitely really want to think about your sampling frame and who qualifies to participate in your study. And consider your comparison schools carefully. Again, if you're looking to do some of that more longitudinal research, then you'll want to compare your institution to that comparator set over time as well. That can be a real tricky exercise, but one that really has great long-term benefits. And then I would say the other really most important consideration from my standpoint is to vet the results. Once you have the results of that data, make sure that you're really vetting that around your campus community to help generate any additional insights.
One quick thing I'll add to, kind of depending on where you are in that process, if you're just kind of at the point where you're, thinking about who you might partner with, I think, again, kind of coming back to the art a little bit, like what's the why? Why? What do you hope to do with that research? Kind of what's your plan for moving that forward? And I think as much as you can always go back to that in the process, whether that's talking with folks that you might work with and helping explain to them like, hey, this is what we really want to do with this information, that would help a partner think more clearly about how to structure the process for you and how to make sure that the outcomes are actionable. But it'll also help you to hopefully take that data and ensure that it doesn't just sit on the shelf too, right? That you're able to really take that and use it to move towards your goals as well, with that why in mind.
Thank you both. Lindsay, could you advance 2 slides to where the contact information for Kelly and yeah, thank you. So that way the audience can see how to get in touch with Renee and Kelly. Another question that came in, the question is around, can we suggest a preference for focus groups or interviews or a survey?
Yeah, absolutely. So for that initial qualitative, I would say that the methodology you want to use should really be aligned with the audience. So let's say that you are really looking to get some information from donors, right? That may be more appropriate to do on an individual one-on-one basis. If we're talking about wanting to get information from current students, right, that may be now more appropriate to bring some students together as a group for a focus group. So there's really a lot that really I would say has to go into that is of course around availability, around time, around people and format, but lining the methodology to your audience as much as you can is really what's going to give you the best results there.
Great. Thank you, Renee. I'll pivot to some more of the questions that came in advance. This is a really good one, particularly for the moment that we're in. So here it is. I'd love to learn more about student-centered recommendations, especially while navigating a polarized higher ed climate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, certainly a very timely question and is really going to depend on your student body. I think again, getting your students together to really hear from them and share information out to them as well as gather information back from them. And providing some pizza along the way to get them there is, a pretty tried and true strategy. I would say, especially in kind of the current landscape, really opening up to hearing from students and hearing what it is that they need, that they're struggling with, and that they are looking for transparency on is really important to hear directly from them.
Thank you, Renee. And then the last question that came in, which is another great question. What do today's students care about when choosing higher ed institutions other than cost, outcomes, and reputation? Are there more intangible affinities higher ed marketers can capitalize on?
Yes, absolutely. That's that intangible vibe, right? That we wish we could just bottle up and understand what it is, because we know that's what our students are looking for. Again, I think kind of going back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier with starting to get beneath those maybe more anticipated or expected factors and really trying to line up, what your students are looking for with who you are as an institution, right? When we talk about developing these emotional connections, it really comes back to the culture, right? The culture that we have at our institution. And our culture is really informed by our community. And so while, one institution really may be, very active, right, or activists, we may have another institution where the student body doesn't gravitate towards that. So it's really about identifying, who we are and what we stand for, and then sharing that out so that we can, attract and admit and retain students that are kind of of a similar vein, right? So that they can be great students, go out and thrive in the world, and also be great alums for us and ambassadors for our institutions as well.
One of the great things that I've heard, kind of from conversations about brand. Many of you may be familiar with the CASE organization, and if you're not, highly recommend you to check them out. But Terry Flannery, who leads that organization, I've heard her say that, you know, the brand should be both a bridge and a mirror, right? So your brand should reflect back who you are, and as we've been talking about today, one of the best ways to do that is really to understand who you are, not just who you say, right, but who your audiences say that you are, how they're experiencing your brand, and then also using that as that connector, right, the bridge to bring people in and to, you know, help them be a part of that as well. And so again, it's going to look different for every institution. Each brand reflection is going to look different externally. But I think just, you know, being willing to commit to that journey is a huge step in really trying to make that connection with audiences.
Great. Thank you both. I love the answers to that one. It's a great question maybe to end a productive webinar on. And I think it's funny how that question and your answers tie back to the revenue and reputation on the scale that we just talked about. The question kind of captured cost, outcomes, and reputation, which kind of aligns with the 3 C's that the Modern Learner Report uncovered that students are looking for in their consideration journey. How much does it cost? What's the convenience factor associated with it, or how fast can I get it? And then does it align with my career objectives and what I'm interested in? And then the reputation comes in there. That's the intangible, that's the differentiator. So probably everyone can send out the same messages around those 3 C's, but how do you differentiate within the 3 C's? And that's where the reputation and your brand message applies. But yeah, going back to that slide there. So love that question. Love your answers. Love all the participation from the audience. So I think we can end there. Lindsay, I want to thank you all for joining us today for the presentation. And again, reach out to Kelly and Renee if you would like follow-up and more information that we can share with you.
Thank you, everyone. Great to
Thank
see
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.